They do prefer to dwell in the national parks with the dry tropical forests. They can range all throughout the national park. They can go from its beaches, savannas, and even into the tropical forests. They do like to escape the heat and humidity today. They also like to keep warm at night. So they take refuge in burrows, and these burrows are barely big enough to contain their bodies. They are considered an endangered species today. Fewer than 4,000 Komodo dragons are alive throughout the world. Komodo Island, about 1,700. The island nearby of Rinka, home to about 1,300. Gilmoltang, that is home to about 100. Gildasemi, being home to about 100. The island of Flores, that is approximately 300. Unfortunately, back in the 90s, there were over 2,000 living on Flores that way. They have been decimated. You also had them also one time living on a nearby island called Padar. They were all but wiped out back in the 1980s. They didn't wipe out the Komodo dragon. What happens is they brought onto the island the deer to feed the dragons. And these are tamer deer. And what happens is the hunters came in and they poached all the deer, thus taking the food for the Komodo dragon. 1992, first Komodo dragon ever hatched outside of Indonesia. Today you can find altogether 55 or more of the offspring around the world. They're contained in about 30 different zoos in the world. Many of you might have witnessed the Komodo dragon in the movie The Freshman with Matthew Broderick and also Marlon Brando. Also the movie Skyfall, and Skyfall is with Daniel Craig's James Bond. Actually, only the lizard in Skyfall was an actual Komodo lizard. His name is Some Guy. He resides today in the London Zoo. The lizard in the movie The Freshman was an Asian monitor lizard. It is a cousin of it, but it's not as deadly at all. Indonesia does have another species of very large lizard, looks very much like it. It's called a monitor, or torch, or sago monitor. The difference is it has a very bright orange head and a glossy black body. You also have a similar lizard in the Philippines, although luckily there, that lizard only eats fruit. Now, due to the areas of the Komodo dragon's limited range over the years, they have been hunted illegally and also legally, although today the national park is trying to enforce a very strict anti-poaching law. This in turn helps protect the dragon population, although recently the government, about 2 years ago, did discover a poaching operation was still taking place. Today, it is the world's largest living lizard, average weight 155 pounds. Males can average 200 pounds. Most males, they'll grow between 8 to 9 feet, but they can measure up to 10 feet. Females, they're smaller. They average about 6 feet in length. The largest specimen ever weighed 366 pounds, although they feel this was supplemented with the weight of his last undigested meal. The dragons can consume at one time 80% of their body weight, and they feed about once a month. Now, its strategy, it is very, very, very quick. It is based on stealth, speed, and overwhelming power. They can run briefly for speeds up to 13 to 18 miles an hour. Now, the locals reported to me that when the dragon runs, its little legs look like egg beaters. I'll take it for an example. I never want to see one running. Now, they can also dive. They can dive to a depth of 15 to 20 feet deep in the ocean. They're not choosy eaters at all. They'll eat any type of meat, whether it be scavenging from a dead carcass or from stalking live animals. Their prey, it ranges from small rodents to large water buffaloes. Main diet now being the Komodo Park stock Timor russet deer. They can also consume on the island the wild boar, Asian palm civet, Rinka cats, goats, feral cats, dogs. Also, they do like the crab-eating macaws. And unfortunately, they also love very small Komodo dragons. Now, they'll normally hunt by stalking along game trails. They'll find where the grass has been matted down, they hide off to the side, and they wait there. And they can spend hours waiting for an animal to come by in that way, whether it be an unsuspecting deer, goat, wild boar. Now, when it catches a four-legged prey, such as a deer, it'll attack the animal first with its feet. It'll jump up with its feet that way, knocking the animal off balance. Although with smaller prey, the dragon will go right straight for the neck of that prey. Now, both hunting methods, they're utilized to smash the animal to the ground, then tear the animal to pieces. It uses its ever-strong muscles, powerful claws and teeth. Their teeth, they're large, they're curved, and are also serrated, and they're perfectly suiting for actually tearing flesh. Now, a large deer, if that gets knocked to the ground and it's unable to escape, the next thing the Komodo dragon will do is it'll tear into its belly. The deer then will be injected with the venom from the dragon, and it causes it to quickly bleed out, go into shock, and then the Komodo dragon will begin to feed. It is designed as a very efficient killing machine. Its lower jaw is like a snake. It's a movable joint. So it can actually unhinge its jaw that way. It can open its mouth unusually wide, and it's liable to swallow large portions of meat at lightning speed. As I mentioned, it consumes up to 80% of its body weight in a feeding. Very interesting. Other large mammals that way, let's say the carnivores, such as lions, they leave 25 to 30% of the kill untouched. They don't eat the hide, the skeleton, also the hooves. Komodo dragon will eat everything of the animal. The bones, the hooves, the hides, even the intestines. It'll take the intestines, rip it out, shake it, clean it out, and then swallow it down. So it leaves nothing behind in that way. Now, after a large kill, which is normally good 40 kilos, the dragon will go without eating for several weeks. It eats about 12 times a year. Now, as I mentioned, it will even consume, unfortunately, young Komodo dragons. Now, what happens is the young, they have a great way of avoiding this. First of all, they normally will hide in trees. Second of all, they'll roll in the fecal matter, to get their body to have an off smell, and that way the dragons, the larger ones, will wish to avoid. Now, their sight in daylight, they're very, very good. That way they can see objects as far as 985 feet or 300 meters. Although they're better at picking moving objects than stationary objects. The locals, how true it is, I don't know, but the locals say that they do distinguish color. They do recommend that we tell our guests when we were on the ships coming in not to wear red ashore, because it does remind the animals of blood. They do have poor vision in dim light. Their hearing, not as strong as a human, but they cannot hear a low-pitched voice or a high, shrill-pitched scream. Now, the primary sense is smell. They can detect odor just like a snake does. They have a yellow forked tongue that comes out. They have a Jacobson's organ. The tongue will come out, it'll go back in, and they can even tell which side the scent is coming from by their tongues in that way. It recognizes the airborne molecules. It has, that way, a very, very finite, right tip of the tongue, has more of a the concentration of the molecules that way. They swing their heads side to side, and they can pick up a scent of prey 1.5 miles to 5 miles away, depending on the direction of the wind. Now, up until 2009, you had the conventional wisdom that it was the bacteria within the dragon's mouth. Some carry over 50 strains of bacteria in the mouth, 7 which are highly septic, and that infected the bitten animal. If the animal managed to escape, it would die in a few days of infection. Today, this considered bacteria's venom theory was based on faulty and also dated studies. It wasn't till 2009, gentleman Brian Fry, he was at the University of Queensland in Australia, he discovered that venom was the true culprit behind the dragon's lethal bite. Fry, he determined this by placing one of the Komodo dragons in a medical scanner. He discovered that the Komodo does have a venom glands, and they are isolated with toxins. When injected, it lowers blood pressure, causes massive bleeding, prevents any clotting, and also induces shock into the animal. Although that bacteria can help finish off an animal rather quickly. For an injured animal, if it was bit by the Komodo dragon, it would normally go into a swampy area or a water area to avoid the dragon. Therefore, with all that bacteria and that venom, they will die quickly. With the smell, they have a sense of smell. They can go locate the animal once it dies in the water. Now, very interesting, one factor, even though very lethal to bite, it does not affect another Komodo dragon at all. Now, they're looking for antibodies in this way, the scientists at this time, and that may be able to get an antivenom to the toxin. Now, they mate between May and August. Males, they become greatly embroiled in ritual combat for the quest, and that's the quest, of course, to attract the female's attention. They'll utilize their tails for support. They come up on the tails and they fight each other standing up. They'll try to throw their opponent to the ground. The bloody loser either runs away or will lie prone and motionless. When they battle, they rumble. That rumble can be felt feet away. It's actually a vibration that actually you cannot believe how strong it is. Now, mating. The males will initiate mating by flicking the tongue on the snout of the female, then on a fold between her torso and the rear leg, and then all over. Now, a ranger, he informed me the only way to tell a female from a male is the arrangement of scales around the area of the genitalia. I'll take the word of the ranger. Now, in September, a female she'll lay approximately 30 eggs. It's called a clutch, and therefore she's avoiding the brutal summer months. Now, the dragon's nest will normally be in a depression or a nest. This nest is basically adopted, or I should say stolen, from birds. Then they'll incubate the eggs for approximately 9 months. Most females lying on the nest for the first 3 months. But it's very interesting, we walked around one of the first times I was on the island, and they showed me all these Komodo nests. Almost all of them were fake. She will build fake nests that any prey coming for her eggs will be distracted, and then she can scare it away. When they hatch that way, they weigh about less than 3.5 pounds, length about 16 inches in length. Once hatched, they flee into the trees for the first 4 or 5 years of their life to avoid the adult Komodos. There, they'll feed upon geckos, lizards, insects. As it grows, it gets a little more bold, will come out of the tree, will go for rodents. Now, also, as I mentioned, many of them are killed by Komodo dragons or other prey when they're that small. If they last for 5 years, they'll weigh about 25 pounds, 11.5 kilograms. They grow at a slow rate then, up until the lifespan, 30 to 40 years, although there has been recorded males that have lived up to the age of 60 years of age. Now, the national park itself, it is mostly contained within the 2 major islands, Komodo and Rinca, also 26 smaller islands and islets, covers an area altogether about 700 square miles. Population of people, about 2,400 living in the islands. Since the area in 1995, the Indonesian government's enlisted the assistance of the Nature Conservatory. That's a Virginia-based environmental group. They now assist greatly with the management of the park. In 2000, the Nature Group, along with the Park Authority, they authorized that way new management plans in the area. They monitor and they control the human activity in the park, including about 50,000 visitors into the park each year. And also, they are going to, if they have a problem with poaching and more, they will probably close for 1 year of the park. Now, it is one of the 7 wonders of the world, the new wonders. Also, it's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, also a man and biosphere site. Surprisingly, the villagers on Komodo Island and throughout the national park, they tolerate the frightening neighbors quite well. Now, they say they've always lived peacefully with the animals in very close proximity. Now, this has something to do probably with what they call the creation myth. And this explains a very unique relationship. There's one traditional legend that tells of a man who once married a dragon princess. She bore 2 twins. One was a human boy, Gorong, and one was a lizard girl, Ora. And they were separated at birth. Legend states that when Gorong grew up, he met a fierce-looking beast in the forest. Just as he was about to spear it, his mother appeared and revealed to him, in fact, it was his sister. But also, many of the people living in the Komodo National Park, they also believe that dragons are spirits of their ancestors. Now, protection laws have been enacted in Komodo Island National Park since the National Park 1980. It is that some will still poison the Komodo dragons. That way they'll poison carrion, and they'll try to get rid of a pesky dragon. And it's somewhat similar to what years ago was done in the American West. Now, also, we have here the villages. They are very concerned. Now, they are becoming, they say, the dragon more aggressive. Now, they used to keep the dragons at bay, the local that way, by feeding the dragons, and they would feed them animal skins and bones, and they knew how, when that animal ate. So they knew the dangers of each of the animals around where they lived. But what happens, they enacted a law in 1994, prohibits anyone on the island from feeding a dragon. Recently, they have sought to actually feed the dragons wild boar 7 times a year. Although the national park has refused this request, their answer was it will make the animals lazy and they'll lose their will to hunt. Now, Desa Komodo is the Indonesian name, and that is the Bahasa language, and that is the only village on Komodo Island. That village, 1,400 out of the 2,400 in the whole park, and that is as of November 2017. With that, you're looking at 1,400, about 180 families. Now, they have that way. They use a lot of restrictions on the people, as I mentioned that way, and it really has impacted the people living there. They have very few options at all to make a living other than fishing. They must rely on what the national park has to offer, and also the influx of tourists into the park area. Now, many of them carve beautiful dragon figures and sell other souvenirs. They set up little food booths also. They actually have just opened up, about 3 years ago, a small little restaurant, the Oasis, that way. But many of the people have left. They've gone to Bali, they've gone to Lombok, and they're searching work. Now, they are what they call Bugis, the people living on the island. They speak a language of the same name. They originally hailed from Bima and East and South Sumbawa, and also in the area of West Flores. Now, a unique fact about the Bugis, very interesting, they believe there are 5 genders, not 2. Both, besides male and female, there are also effeminate men, that's called a Kalabai, and masculine women, Kalalai, and they represent the 3rd and the 4th genders. But they carry out a very definitive roles within the Bugis society. The 5th is a rapidly disappearing, it's called the Bisu. And the Bisu is seen as intermediaries between people and gods, and they embody both masculine and feminine elements. This duality of the elements is believed to provide them with the power to connect between the natural and the spiritual world. Now, most of the Bisu are male, although some are biologically female. They are inducted in their 20s to become part shaman and also part priest. Now, the Bisu, they once truly served as spiritual advisors and healers to the king. They guarded the royal regalia and performed sacred rituals during weddings and also at harvest time. Although today there are very few Bisu left within the island's population. Now, unfortunately, most of the children, they go to National Park School, although fewer than 10% will ever go beyond the 4th grade. There are 2 reasons for this. High school is on a nearby island, and most feel that will not require any other further education in order to become fishermen like the rest of their families, and that is the main occupation on the island. Although originally the Bugis were Buddhists, today they practice Sunni Islam, and it makes the existence on the island somewhat symbolic, for they do not go after the wild pigs. So the wild pigs populate and also are part of the food diet for the dragons. Now, one of the rangers, when I spoke to him, he says the villagers are a perfect group to live alongside the animals. They know how important the dragon is to their livelihood. Their houses, they construct them on stilts so the dragons can go underneath. They store their livestock on high platforms. At night, they will rarely venture outside of the glow of the lanterns. Everybody carries these sticks with a fork, like a little snake stick, but picture them 7 foot tall, and that's to keep the animals at bay. The graves of the deceased, they are surrounded by cement to keep the dragons from taking away the bodies. The children, they will actually go and they will reflexively throw rocks if a dragon ventures near. If it does venture too close, the villagers will strike a very aggressive posture that provides a very large and also aggressive presence. They'll also bark, flail their arms and legs, and stomping at their feet. As I mentioned previously, the dragons are sneak attackers. They don't like a confrontation, so they'll normally run away from the people. Now, I'm going to give you a little bit of history that way about fatalities and attacks. Since 2007, 2 recent deaths have been reported, also several close calls. 2007, unfortunately, a 9-year-old villager was mauled. He was squatting to relieve himself behind a bush in the back of his hut. They were able to chase the dragon away, but the child did die of loss of blood. It was the first fatal attack on a human in 33 years. A 31-year-old fisherman was killed when he accidentally stepped on 2 lizards in the grass as he was crossing a field to pick some fruit. And the nearest hospital is on the island of Flores, and that's about 4 hours away. And unfortunately, he did die before he got to the island. Now, very interesting, back in 2009, right after my first visit, a dragon that way made a visit to the ranger's house. It was a 46-year-old ranger. He sat at his desk. What he didn't know is during the night the door was open. A dragon climbed up the flight of stairs, up through the door, and then situated himself directly under his desk. The ranger, when he sat down, his legs were attacked as he dangled him off the chair. He was rescued by his colleagues, and they were able to get him over to Flores in time.
Oh.
Now, Rinka, I told you about that island. There's 1,300 dragons. You had an unfortunate group of shipwrecked divers. They encountered a very hungry group of dragons. Now, they were able to fight back against the dragons. Very interesting. What they did is they tossed them their lead weights off their weight belts, and the dragon ate them. And also they pelted them with rocks to keep them at bay. An 83-year-old female villager, she almost lost her hand. She was able to actually strike the dragon on the nose, and it actually, that way with a broom, and she was actually let go. Now, on the area of May of 2017, there was a tourist from Singapore. What happened, he went over as a visitor, he could go and stay in the village. They took him out in the night and they showed him dragons. Well, he got up early in the morning, decided he wanted to go back and look at the dragons. He went out and he took a look at the big boy in front of him, got the cameras that never looked behind him. There was a small dragon behind him, and they were able to get him over to Flores before he actually bled out. Now, something that didn't make the papers that much, but I find quite interesting, it's a little closer to home. 2001. How many heard of the actress Sharon Stone? Okay, she gave her then husband, he was a San Francisco newspaper editor, Phil Bronson, a very unusual birthday gift. She gave him special access to the LA Zoo at night. And part of the access was the Komodo dragon's cage. As Bronson was posing with photos with the dragon, the ranger looked down and kept seeing the dragon taking his tongue towards his white sneakers. And he says, "Oh, we feed them white rats. So you might think it's a rat. Take your shoes off." Took his shoes off, put his feet back down, and the dragon bit him. And that way here, so that way, it almost that way, took his foot off, it took his big toe and several tendons in his foot also. They were able to pry the dragon's mouth open. He was quickly assisted, but it didn't get much news and no one was prosecuted. Now, due to the attacks that have transpired in the village, they've asked for a 2.2 meter or 7-foot concrete wall to encircle the village. Unfortunately, the park authority once again has rejected that, although they did have a makeshift barrier built out of trees and broken branches, but they do realize if a dragon wants to break through, it's going to be able to. Now you have here the area of the coming in, the park rangers. They accompany you with a 7-foot long stick with the Y to keep the dragons at bay. Now, years ago, they would pose for pictures. They'd poke the dragons, or they'd run in front of the dragon. That way, as they were being chased, they are not allowed to touch, harass, or do anything with the dragons anymore. You also have here the Pink Beach, and that is for swimming and snorkeling. It's a patrolled beach on the other side of the island. One bad thing, if you're going to do it, the boats that you have to utilize, it takes a lot of work getting in and out of those boats. So here we are. This is the area coming into. That is the smaller little island of Komodo. So here is the anchorage. So we're going to be in the island itself. By the way, there is diving there also, but knowing that Komodo dragons can dive 15 to 20 feet, I don't recommend it. That is the area of the village. All those houses are on stilts, you can see. Here we have here all the villages, all the boats. That is the pier that the tender pier will come into. There's one of the boats of the locals. You're on the tender pier. Those are the boats that go out to the Pink Beach. So here we are coming up, coming into the national park. That's not a real one. But a Komodo's lunch. That are the Timarusa deer. And you'll see them all over the island. It looks like that one got hit by a Komodo.
Oh.
There's a wild boar. That is a beach. No swimming at a beach is not patrolled. You can see the kids. Now here, all the national park rules, the flora. There's some beautiful orchids on the island also. That is one of the sticks you'll see the locals carrying around. So more of the conservation aspect. There's one of our guides. There's with the stick. Now, you cannot see it right away, and the guide didn't say anything. As we walk past the house, underneath, It's a Komodo dragon.
Oh.
And he just walked us right by it, no words or anything else. Now here, another one just lying in front of the house. And you have to look at those claws up close. They are sharp razors. There's another one. This is all just walking in the area of the paths. Now here we're going to go on the guided hike. They have all the different trails. Another one just lying out. Now here we are on the trail. There'll be a guide in front and a guide in back. You have the beautiful wild orchids all throughout this area. Now here's the baby Komodos. What happens, the palm trees will rot out as they get older. And the baby Komodos will climb up and go inside, and that's their refuge. So when you see that, you look around for the baby Komodos. There's one. Looks like a cute little lizard, but he's still poisonous. Now here we are coming to the watering hole, and this is where they all will hang out. And they are watching you. They know exactly where you are at any time. It's nice when an animal looks at you and goes, lunch. There's a tongue. So once again, 1.5 to 5 miles, and that little forked tongue can tell which side the animal's on. And you see them here getting ready, a little bit of a fight, the challenge between the males. And then you can see him, he just laid down and gave up. So more of the babies doing the hiking trail, you find the trees. There's a little larger one, he ventured out of the trees looking for rodents. Now there's the Timor deer, they're all around the island, and they're stocked all throughout the national park for the Komodos. Now this is the wayward. This is one right down, we're on the beach where all the food, everything's being served. And he walked right by, didn't pay heed to anybody. And here is what I call the mall. And this is how the locals make their money. They have all the different arts. They make the little small baby crawling one. Now it's very interesting when they make this. They do it like they do in Jamaica with the wood. It's not a brown wood, it's a light wood, but they use shoe polish. And they dye them with shoe polish. There's a little area. And this one here is very interesting, because this was during Ramadan. And being Sunni Muslim, they actually still prepared food and sold food to the guests. I thought it was very nice. There's your nasi goreng. That's a new restaurant. But I love this. I am taking the photo of this. Stood there, and literally 10 seconds later, he crossed. So there's a little restaurant. This is the oldest female on the island. I'm sitting that way. I went down to get the photo, but I'm sitting up above them, and you have that oldest one there. Look at the size of those claws. And somebody came and started bothering her, and she took nothing of gruff of that. She went up. She wrestled that male down, basically threw him to the ground where it vibrated, and he just went, okay, I give up. Now this is the Pink Beach. Now here we are coming out. There's the boats. So it looks like an ideal boat, but I gotta warn you, getting on, that's the first start, then the second. So it's not an easy trip out. Now alongside is the snorkeling gear, water, soda, all different going out, the beach supplies, and they'll patrol on those boats in the water. Passing by the village, you can see everything raised up. That is the Pink Beach. And then here is a beautiful lookout. So what they do is they shuttle you to the beach on the small boats. You come ashore, and that really, you can't see it in this photo, where the water laps up to the shore, it turns pink. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's one of the few in the world. They have the free snorkeling gear for you. They have the souvenirs. And then you can walk up to the area for the hike. So here we are walking up to the lookout. It's one of those ones that doesn't look that bad, and when you're halfway up, you're going, why did I do this? But here's the view down. Absolutely stunning view of the island. You can see how beautifully clear the water is, the reefs. Looking out another little cove. And here you do have the kids, quite nice. And then here, coming back wasn't fun either. So here, this is the dining. They make the nasi goreng. They have a little restaurant, shopping. They have all the souvenirs. That's how they make their money. And that's one of the reasons that they didn't stop tours going on. So it is still open. And for now, I haven't heard anything about the closing for a year. They are looking down the road at possibly closing. You can also get to the islands by boat from either Bali or Lombok, but that is a couple days trip. And there are beautifully appointed wooden boats that go out. So ladies and gentlemen, I thank you. I hope you enjoyed living on Komodo.